Alright, guys. So tonight we're going to discuss something that I'm sure has happened to everybody in this class at some point in time. And I know it's definitely happened to me more than once. Sometimes it's happened strictly because my pure stupidity, lack of attention to the situation. But it can happen to anybody at any time without any forewarning. And what we're talking about is a dead battery on your car. I'm sure that many of you have experienced how to jump off a car, whether having somebody help you out or doing it yourself. But I have run into more people that don't know anything about it, my wife for one, than I have that actually know the correct process for jump starting a car using battery cables. So what we're going to start with is, first off, you want to make sure that the battery is dead. The best way to look at that, your battery, a lot of people think, okay, my car didn't start, so the battery's dead. Not necessarily the case. The best way to check and make sure that your battery is the problem is turning the key in the ignition. If the car cranks over like normal, just does not start, it's not an issue with the battery in most cases. If the car attempts to crank over and it's a real slow crank over, it could be a battery issue. If you turn your headlights on and you get outside the car, if the headlights seem dim, then more than likely you have a battery issue. You can turn the lights on your dash, on all the gauges. If those are dim or don't come on, it might possibly be a battery issue. Once you determine if it is a battery, your next process is going to be positioning your cars so that you can jump them off safely. Sometimes this is a challenge if your car is pulled into a parking spot. Sometimes you have to push that car out of that parking spot so that you can pull up the car that you're going to use to jump off the dead car close enough to set up the battery cables. If your car happens to be in a position where you can't get the other car close enough, sometimes your best bet is just to call somebody else and have them come tow the car. Or you can get a battery charger and charge the battery. Sometimes you can use those to jump as well. But for this situation, we're strictly talking about jumping off with another car and battery cables. So you're going to want to position the car. In the best case scenario, you want to get both front ends of the car facing each other with a walk-through space in between, close enough for the cables to reach. Most cables are about 8 to 10 feet long, so you're going to have to be fairly close. Once you get the cars positioned, go ahead and shut both of the cars completely off. You don't want them running. You're going to pop the hood on both sides, both cars, and then at this point, before you go any further, safety. We're going to get into safety. Always safety when you're dealing with cars, especially when you're dealing with batteries. In a situation like this, a lot of things can happen. My father, which has worked on cars pretty much his entire life, his name's Roy Strickland. He's told me some very, very interesting situations where batteries have blown up, where they've caught fire, and luckily enough, he's never been hurt, but he's actually seen people who've been hurt from them. So safety is the number one situation when you're dealing with jumping off a car battery or dealing with cars in general. So most people won't do it, but you're going to want to get safety goggles, glasses, and also rubber gloves. Batteries are full of sulfuric acid, and when you're actually jump starting a car or starting a car in general, batteries put off a very poisonous gas. Most people don't know that. It's extremely flammable as well. So number one, safety. Get your safety gear, goggles and gloves. Once you have that safety gear together, then your next step is going to be locating and inspecting the battery. Most people think locating a battery is easy. Well, I can tell you that's not. I've been around cars my entire life, and I actually had a relationship at one time where I was going to jump my girlfriend's car off, and she was driving a Dodge Stratus. Opened the hood, no battery. Couldn't find a battery anywhere. So we actually had to pull out the manual, which is your best bet for locating the battery. If you've never jumped a car off and you don't know where it's at, pull out the owner's manual. In the owner's manual, it'll actually tell you exactly where that battery is at. In her car, in this situation, we actually had to take on the driver's side, turn the steering wheel completely to the driver's side of the car, and up inside the fender well, there was a little trap door. Open up the trap door, and the battery was in there. I've seen batteries in trunks of cars before. And then they can be in the engine compartment, which is underneath the hood, and it could be on the left and right side. So, as easy as it sounds, it's not always that easy. Locate the battery. Once you've located the battery, you're going to want to inspect the battery, you're going to want to inspect the cables. The battery itself, I'm sure most of you know what a battery looks like, but let's get into that. I've printed off a little picture here. Most batteries are going to look like this. On this picture, there's actually a cap on the terminal here and the terminal here. This one, with it being red, that's going to be your positive side of your battery. And this one right here is going to be your negative side of the battery. On your battery, right around this terminal, there's going to be a little plus sign that's actually molded into the casing of the battery. That plus is always positive. This side of the battery, right next to this terminal, there'll be a little minus sign. That's going to be your negative side. Once you take these caps off, there's no color coordination. So you have to go strictly off of the symbol. So, once you locate the battery, we're going to inspect the battery. What you're going to look for is visible signs of wear, corrosion. When you have your cables that are actually attached to the battery, they can have green corrosion. And what that is that battery has sulfuric acid, which is corrosive. So over a period of time, you can get a little bit of that corrosion in between your connections, and you may just have a bad connection. That could be what's causing your battery or your car not to start. So you're going to want to inspect it, make sure there's no cracks in the battery. If there's cracks in the battery, then it could be leaking, which jumping off the battery is not going to help you in that situation. So inspect the battery. Look at those terminals. If the terminals are corroded, then you're going to want to take, most of the time you have to have a wrench, which hopefully if somebody brought you jumper cables, they've got a few tools with them. Take those terminals off. You can take a knife, you can take a wire brush, anything that's got a little bit of abrasion to it, and you're going to want to clean the inside of the terminal, or the wire cables rather. It's going to have a little hole in it, and you want to clean out the inside of that hole, and then on the terminal itself, the terminal post on the battery, you're going to want to clean that off where you have a good shiny metal showing, okay? Once you get those where they're nice and clean, put it all back together, try starting the car. That could fix your issue. In this situation, we're going to say no, it doesn't. So, once you get those cleaned up, battery's inspected, got the cables on, everything is good. Now we're going to move on to hooking up the cables, okay? Now keep in mind, at this time, both cars are completely shut off. Neither one's running, okay? So, we've already gone over the layout of the battery, okay? So now we're going to go over the layout of the cables. Most cables are color coordinated, just like I showed you the terminals on your battery. You're going to have a red cable and you're going to have a black cable. And at the end of the cables, they're going to have clamps on them. Some of them can be orange and black. I've seen that. But most of the time, they're going to be red and black. It keeps everything organized for you. Red is always going to be your positive side. Black is always going to be your negative side. So this is where you may get into a little bit of difference in what you've seen some people do and what I'm about to tell you, because this is the correct process for actually hooking up the cables. Keep in mind, both cars are off. You're going to actually start with the red clamp, and you're going to hook it to the positive side of your dead battery. Okay, you're going to do that first. Red clamp, open it up, get it on that terminal, or you can hook it on the clamp itself that's actually attached to the terminal. Most of the time you can't clamp it directly to the terminal, so you have to hook it onto the clamp that's got the wire in it. You're going to hook it onto there, okay? Once you get that hooked onto the dead terminal, then you're going to go to the car that you're going to use to jump it off that has the good battery. You're going to take the red clamp, hook it to the positive side, the red side or the positive side on the good battery. Then you're going to go back and you're going to grab the negative side, still at the good battery, and hook up the black cable to the negative side, the one with the minus, on the good battery on that car. Okay? So now you've got three hooked up. You've got one red to the dead battery, and your red and your black on your good battery. Now we're going to go back to the car with the dead battery. Okay? At this point, this is what most people don't do. I've seen a lot of people just take the negative, the black cable, the only one that's free, and they stick it on that negative side of the battery. That's not what you want to do. You want to stick it to a grounding point, okay? Your grounding point is a bare metal spot on the car frame or something that's attached to the frame of the car, okay? If you look at the battery, you'll have a cable that comes out of it, and that cable will go to a bolt or a spot on the frame of the car, and it's bolted in. That's your best point to ground. Sometimes the cables aren't long enough, so you can't do it. You just want to get it on a grounded spot on the car. So once you get those hooked up, we want to get ready to start the car. What are we going to do before we start the car? Safety, okay? So once you've got these cables run, you want to check that none of the cables, none of the extra cable, because some of these cables are long, they're not drooped down inside the engine compartments. Right at the front of the engine, most cars have cooling fans, and as soon as you start that car up, that fan is going to start turning. So if you've got any cable that's drooped down inside those engine compartments, and you kick that car over, it's going to catch that fan, it's going to split that cable, you can have a big arc, and it's going to freak you out. So check, make sure all the cables are drooped up and out of the way of anything moving or that could start moving in your car as soon as you start it, okay? Once you've done that, you want to get in the car that has the good battery. You want to start that car up. Once you get that car started, you want to push on the accelerator. You don't want to rev the engine up really high, but you want to push on the accelerator where it's a little bit above an idle. And you want to hold it like that for 60 seconds. Okay? What that's going to do is that's actually going to, it's charging your battery, even though your battery is good, but it's sending a good flow of amperage through the cables into the dead battery. So if you don't rev the engine, you're not going to get as many amps through there. It's not going to work as well. So accelerate slightly, 60 seconds. Once you get to that point, you want to get into the car that has the dead battery and turn the ignition. Okay? The car will come on. Hopefully, that's what we're going for. If it does not come on, then go ahead. I mean, depending on how it reacts, if it just seems like it doesn't have the power yet, then you want to shut it off. You want to shut the car off that is actually good and running, and you want to check your connections. Okay? So what you want to do is disconnect your ground post. That's on the dead car side. The one that's actually hooked to a grounding point on the car. Disconnect that one first. And then you want to take all the other connections, you want to wiggle them. Those teeth that are on the clamps will slightly dig in to whatever metal they're into. And you want them to dig in really good. If you don't have a good connection, you're not going to get the amperage through that's going to start the car. So, wiggle all of your connections. Once you've got all your connections wiggled, go back, hook up that black or negative wire back on your grounding post. Once you've got that done, we're going to get back in the car, and we're going to start up the car has a good battery, get it running. Then we're going to go back to the car that has the dead battery, crank it over again. Hopefully at this point it starts up. If it does not, then you want to wait 5 minutes. You want to leave the car that is running on for 5 minutes. Keep it accelerated, not at a high speed, slight acceleration. Then get back in the dead car and start it. Okay? 2 scenarios at this point. The car will either start and you're good to go, or it doesn't start. If it does not start at this point, then your battery could be a bad battery. You may have to replace it. At that point, you would want to take the battery off your car, take it to a parts store, AutoZone, O'Reilly, something like that, and they can test it for you. They can tell you if the battery has a bad cell or something like that, it needs to be replaced. It's not going to charge. Let's just say that the car does start, and that's what we're going for, and that's what we're hoping for. The car starts. At this point, you want to disconnect the cables in the exact same order, in the reverse order that you hooked them up. So, you're going to go to the dead car, take your grounding post off first, then go back to your good battery, take your negative wire off, take your positive wire off, go back to your dead battery, and take your positive wire off. Now your cables are off. During this entire process, I forgot to mention, but I'm going to mention it now, you never want the ends of your cables to touch. If you have 2 wires hooked up to a good battery and the two opposite ends touch, you're more or less shorting your battery across each other. And it will arc and it will freak you out, and it could cause damage to the battery that they're hooked to. So you want to make sure that never happens. So at this point, we've got the cables off of the car. What do we do now? Some people say, oh, you're good to go. Shut the car off, you're good. No, that's not the case. Your battery has to charge. If it was dead to the point where it couldn't start your car, then you need to give it time to charge. So once you have your car started, you want to accelerate the engine just like you were doing on the good car, the good battery on that car. You want to do the exact same thing now that you have your car started. You're going to accelerate that car for 5 minutes. Slight acceleration. You don't want to rev the engine because that's bad for the engine. Sorry about that. My dog's going crazy. So you're going to accelerate the engine for 5 minutes. Once you're done with that 5-minute process, you're going to leave the car running for another 20 minutes. Okay? If you have some place to go that's about a 20-minute drive, that's even better. Get in your car and drive. Most of the time I wouldn't recommend that, just in case there is an issue with the battery. You go somewhere, you stop the car, get out, go inside, do your shopping, come back, and it's dead again. The battery's not charging, you're going to have to replace the battery. In this situation, we're going to say charge it for 20 minutes, then shut it off, then try and restart it. As long as it starts back up, your battery is good and your situation is good. So, recapping, number 1, make sure it's the battery that's got the issue. Number 2, position your cars so that they're safe. Number 3, get your safety equipment. That's always key. Safety equipment is key. Once you have your safety equipment, you want to attach your jumper cables. And remember, when you're attaching your cables, remember the layout of the car, or the layout of the battery and the layout of the cables. Okay, your battery has your positive and your negative. Your cables have your red, which is positive, and your black, which is negative. Okay, you also want to inspect the battery. Make sure the battery is good, because if the battery is bad, there's no reason to jump start the battery. Okay, so safety, checking the battery and the layout, making sure the battery is good, hooking up your cables in the right process, unhooking your cables in the right process, and allowing the jumped off battery time to recharge. I hope this helps everybody out. I hope you never have to use it, but I can pretty much guarantee that you will at some point. Most women refuse to learn it because they figure hopefully some man is there at some point to help them out and get them going. But just in case, hopefully those of you that watch this can use it sometime and it helps you out in a situation where you need it. I'd ask if anybody has any questions, but I can't do that. So hopefully I gave you enough information to get this going. Thanks for your time.